Have you ever stopped to wonder why, as we move through life, the faces around us change, yet something within us remains constant? What if I told you that as we age, the idea that we need friends is nothing more than a deeply ingrained illusion? An illusion designed to keep us looking outward when the real power has always been within. For years, we have been conditioned to believe that our happiness is tied to relationships, that we need others to feel complete. But as we age, something profound happens. There's a shift. The same conversations that once excited us now seem repetitive. The social gatherings that once felt necessary now feel draining. Why? Because our energy is evolving beyond the need for external stimulation. At a certain point, we stop chasing friendships not out of bitterness, not out of loneliness, but out of understanding. We begin to realize that every connection we ever needed was always within us. The need for validation, the fear of solitude, all begin to fade when we recognize the immense power of our own consciousness. And let's talk about the science of it. The brain is an electrical masterpiece, a transmitter of energy, constantly interacting with the quantum field. Every thought, every emotion shapes the reality we experience. And here's the truth. When you learn to regulate your own energy, when you master the art of existing in a state of wholeness, you stop seeking companionship to fill a void, because there is no void. Most people are afraid of detachment. They think it means isolation, but detachment is not about being alone. It is about being free. Free from the need to be understood, free from the expectation that someone else is responsible for our emotional state. And here's the final shift. Aging is not about becoming less. It is about becoming more present, more aware, more connected to the infinite intelligence that has always been guiding us. You are not the friendships you've made or lost. You are not the relationships that have faded. You are a consciousness, limitless, whole, and unbound. So as we age, do we need friends? Or do we finally realize we were never alone to begin with? This speech is designed to sound thought-provoking, introspective, and deeply resonant with themes of consciousness, energy, and personal evolution. Let me know if you'd like any refinements. From the moment we are born, we are taught to seek fulfillment outside of ourselves. As children, we crave approval from our parents. As teenagers, we yearn to belong to a group. As adults, we build relationships, careers, and social identities, all in the pursuit of a sense of wholeness. We measure our worth by the number of friends we have, the invitations we receive, and the connections we maintain. But what if this entire framework is built on an illusion? For decades, we have been programmed to believe that our emotional well-being depends on external relationships. We've been told that friendship is essential to happiness, that without a social circle we are incomplete. This belief keeps us looking outward, chasing companionship, relying on others to regulate our emotions. But deep down, there's a realization waiting to surface. No external connection will ever provide lasting fulfillment. Think about the friendships that have come and gone in your life. At one point they felt necessary, almost defining. But over time they faded, dissolved, or changed. And yet here you are. You continued, you adapted, you found joy, not because of who was around you, but because of how you chose to experience life. The truth is, friendships, like all external things, are impermanent. Relying on them for fulfillment is like building a home on shifting sand. As we age, we begin to see through this illusion. We recognize that the longing for connection was never about others, it was about ourselves. It was about seeking something within us that we thought was missing. But what if nothing was ever missing? What if everything we were looking for in others was always present inside us? When we break free from the illusion of external fulfillment, we stop looking to others to complete us. We no longer seek validation through friendships. We no longer need a social mirror to remind us of who we are. Instead, we turn inward. We cultivate self-awareness, inner peace, and a deep sense of wholeness that is independent of anyone else's presence. The paradox is this: the moment we stop needing people, we experience true connection. Not to others, but to ourselves. We no longer grasp for friendships out of fear of solitude. Instead, we embrace solitude as the gateway to something deeper, something more powerful. And when we do, we realize that fulfillment was never out there, it was always within. As we journey through life, something profound begins to happen, something that many fail to recognize until they are deep into it. There is a shift, not just in our physical bodies, but in our energy, our awareness, and our very state of being. The things that once excited us no longer hold the same charge. The social interactions that once felt essential now seem unnecessary. It's not that we have become indifferent or withdrawn, it's that we have evolved. In our younger years, our energy is scattered outward. We are drawn to experiences, people, and social engagements that stimulate us. We crave external validation, connection, and the feeling of belonging. Our nervous system is wired for excitement, for external stimuli that make us feel alive. But as we age, our energy begins to retract inward. The mind no longer seeks constant stimulation, it seeks stillness. The heart no longer craves attachment, it craves peace. At first, this transition can feel unsettling. The urge to be around people, to engage in conversations, to maintain friendships that once felt significant starts to diminish. Some may interpret this as loneliness or isolation, but it is neither. It is the natural movement of energy from the external to the internal. It is a sign of growth, not loss. We begin to realize that much of what we once sought in others was simply a reflection of what we needed to cultivate within ourselves. The laughter we once shared in a group, we find it within, in the quiet joy of our own presence. The deep conversations we once craved, they are now replaced with inner reflection and a dialogue with the self. The validation we once needed from friends, it dissolves as we understand that we were always enough on our own. This energy shift is not a rejection of people, but a reorientation of priorities. When we were younger, friendships were a source of identity, a way to define who we were through the company we kept. But as we grow, we no longer need to be defined by anyone else. Our sense of self solidifies, and with it comes the realization that we don't need external relationships to confirm our worth. With this shift comes an incredible freedom. There is no longer an urgency to maintain social ties out of obligation. There is no longer a fear of being alone. Instead, solitude becomes a sanctuary. Silence becomes a teacher. The energy that was once spent on maintaining relationships is now directed toward personal expansion, toward deeper understanding, creativity, and connection with something far greater than the temporary nature of human interaction. And so we move from seeking outward to dwelling inward, not because we are lacking, but because we have finally found what we were looking for all along. There comes a time in life when we begin to realize that everything we ever needed has always existed within us. The idea that we require others to feel whole, to be happy, to find meaning, this is nothing more than a conditioned belief, a societal program that has been running in the background of our consciousness for far too long. But as we age, the program starts to lose its power. We begin to see it for what it is, an illusion. And in its place, a new understanding emerges, one of complete self-sufficiency. For most of our lives, we have been taught to seek fulfillment in relationships, in friendships, in the presence of others. We are told that being social is necessary, that a life without companionship is a life of emptiness. But if that were true, why do so many people, despite being surrounded by others, still feel lonely? Why do we see individuals with countless friends, yet they continue searching, restless, never fully content? The answer is simple. External connections can never replace an internal foundation. No number of friendships can fill the space within us that is meant to be occupied by our own self-awareness, our own mastery over our mind and emotions. Self-sufficiency is not about rejecting others. It is not about isolating oneself or living in solitude for the sake of it. It is about reaching a state where you are no longer emotionally dependent on anyone. It is about knowing that whether people stay or leave, whether friendships last or fade, your sense of peace remains unshaken. When you are self-sufficient, you do not need people to complete you because you were never incomplete to begin with. This realization is transformative. It shifts the way we engage with the world. Instead of seeking validation from others, we generate it from within. Instead of relying on external circumstances to dictate our emotional state, we cultivate a deep inner stability. We no longer feel the need to chase friendships for fear of being alone, because we understand that solitude is not something to be feared, it is something to be embraced. The power of self-sufficiency lies in the freedom it brings. When you no longer need friendships for emotional survival, every interaction becomes a choice, not a necessity. You engage with people because you want to, not because you need to. And when you reach this point, your relationships, if you choose to have them, transform. They become authentic, free from expectation or dependency. But if you choose solitude, you do so from a place of strength, not lack. To master self-sufficiency is to reclaim your power. It is to understand that nothing outside of you was ever meant to sustain you. Everything you have been searching for, peace, happiness, wholeness, has always been within. And once you grasp this truth, you are no longer bound by the need for friendships or external connections. You become enough. You always were. There is a great misunderstanding about detachment. People often think it means withdrawing from the world, cutting ties, or isolating oneself. But true detachment is not about separation, it is about freedom. It is the ability to move through life without clinging, without depending, without being controlled by the presence or absence of others. And when this understanding takes root, it brings with it the most profound form of liberation. For much of life, we are taught to hold on to relationships, hold on to friendships, hold on to the past. We are conditioned to believe that attachment equals love, that closeness equals security. But attachment is not love, it is dependency. And dependency at its core is a form of bondage. When we attach ourselves too deeply to friendships, to people, to identities, we unknowingly hand over our peace, making it contingent on external circumstances that are always changing. But when we learn the art of detachment, something remarkable happens. We stop fearing loss. We stop expecting permanence from things that were never meant to be permanent. We begin to realize that every person who enters our life does so for a reason, for a season, and sometimes for a lifetime, but never because we need them to complete us. People come and go, and that is the natural rhythm of existence. Clinging to friendships out of habit or obligation only traps us in a cycle of emotional dependence, where our happiness is dictated by forces outside our control. Liberation comes when we release that need. It comes when we understand that we can appreciate people without possessing them, that we can love without attachment, that we can enjoy moments without fearing their end. And in this space of non-attachment, relationships, if they remain, become purer, lighter, free from the weight of expectation. But if they fade, there is no suffering, only gratitude for what was. This is not loneliness, this is power. It is the ability to walk through life with an open heart, but not a grasping one. It is knowing that solitude is not an absence, but a presence, your own. When we reach this state, we no longer seek friendships out of fear of being alone. Instead, we find peace in ourselves, and from that peace, everything else flows naturally. Detachment does not mean you do not care. It means you care from a place of freedom, not necessity. It means you give without expecting, love without clinging, and exist without relying, and in this you find true liberation, the kind that no friendship, no relationship, no external force can ever take away. The brain is not just a biological organ. It is an interface between our thoughts and the infinite field of possibilities that surrounds us. Every thought we think, every emotion we feel, every belief we hold sends out a frequency, a signal into the quantum field. And this field, which is the very fabric of reality, responds accordingly. What we experience in our lives is not random. It is a direct reflection of our state of being. For most of our lives, we have been conditioned to believe that fulfillment comes from external sources, friendships, relationships, social connections. But neuroscience and quantum physics reveal a deeper truth. The external world is merely a mirror of our internal state. When we rely on friendships to bring us happiness, we are unconsciously broadcasting a signal of lack, of incompleteness. We are telling the quantum field that we need something outside of us to feel whole. And as a result, we remain stuck in a cycle of seeking, of chasing, of never quite feeling enough. But the moment we shift our focus inward, everything changes. The brain is a transmitter and receiver of energy, and when we learn to regulate our thoughts, emotions, and intentions, we begin to generate a new signal, one of self-sufficiency, of completeness, of inner fulfillment. When this happens, we no longer need friendships to validate our existence. We are no longer dependent on social interaction for emotional stability. Instead, we become aligned with a deeper intelligence, one that transcends the limitations of human relationship. Science has shown that the brain does not distinguish between real and imagined experiences. When we cultivate a deep inner connection with ourselves, the same neural pathways are activated as if we were engaging with others. This means that true connection, the kind that brings peace, joy, and fulfillment, does not require external friendships. It can be created from within. And when we understand this, we realize that we are never truly alone. The quantum field responds to certainty, to clarity, to self-awareness. When we stop looking outward for connection and instead embody the feeling of wholeness within, the external world shifts to reflect that. Friendships, if they appear, do so naturally, without need or expectation. But if they do not, there is no void, because the connection we were seeking was always with ourselves, with the infinite intelligence that moves through us. Mastering this understanding is not just about emotional independence. It is about reclaiming our power as creators of our reality. When we stop seeking friendships to complete us and instead generate fulfillment from within, we tap into the limitless potential of the mind. And in that space, we realize that we were never meant to rely on the external world for happiness, because everything we need has always been within us. As we age, we begin to recognize that much of what we once identified with was never truly us. The roles we played, the friendships we maintained, the social circles we belonged to, all were aspects of a temporary self, a constructed identity shaped by time, memory, and experience. But beyond all of this, there exists something deeper, something untouched by the passing years. And when we tap into that, we realize that we are not bound by time, nor by the labels and relationships that once defined us. For most of life, we are caught in the illusion of identity. We see ourselves through the lens of who we were in relation to others. Our sense of self is woven into our friendships, our conversations, our interactions. But as we age, these external identities begin to dissolve. The friends we once relied on drift away, the roles we once played lose their significance, and in that space, a profound question arises. If I am not these relationships, if I am not these roles, then who am I? This is where the real transformation begins. The moment we stop identifying with the past, the moment we let go of the need to maintain a socially constructed self, we step into something greater, a timeless state of being. No longer defined by history or expectation, we become present. We exist not as someone shaped by the accumulation of years, but as pure awareness, free from attachment, free from the weight of who we were supposed to be. Time, as we perceive it, is a construct of the mind. The past exists only in memory, the future only in anticipation. When we transcend the need to define ourselves through these mental projections, we step into the eternal now, and in this space, friendships and external relationships lose their grip on us, not because they don't matter, but because we no longer need them to anchor us to an identity that no longer exists. When we reach this state, solitude is no longer solitude, it is presence, it is peace, it is a direct connection to the field of consciousness that exists beyond all temporary attachments. The need for friendships, for external validation dissolves, because we no longer see ourselves as separate from anything. We are not individuals seeking connection. We are the connection itself. And so, as we age, we do not lose anything. We gain everything. We transcend the illusion of self built on time, memory, and relationships. And in doing so, we step into a vast, limitless awareness. Here there is no loneliness, no longing, no attachment, only presence, only being, only the pure and infinite freedom of knowing that we were never just the identities we once clung to. We were always something more, something eternal. As we age, no friends needed. For most of our lives, we have been conditioned to believe that friendships are essential for happiness, that our social connections define who we are, and that without them we are incomplete. But as we age, a shift begins to take place, one that few understand, yet all eventually experience. The need for external validation, for companionship, for the presence of others begins to fade. Not because we are becoming indifferent, not because we no longer care, but because we are evolving. We have spent years, perhaps decades, building relationships, maintaining friendships, and seeking connection. And while there was a time when this felt necessary, as we grow, we begin to recognize a deeper truth, that everything we were looking for in others was always within us. The illusion of external fulfillment begins to dissolve, and in its place we find something far greater, inner wholeness. The energy we once scattered outward, seeking, grasping, maintaining ties out of obligation, naturally starts to turn inward. The brain, once addicted to social stimulation, now craves stillness. The heart, once longing for attachment, now desires peace. This is not loneliness, this is not isolation, this is expansion. This is stepping into a new level of being where we no longer need others to complete us because we were never incomplete to begin with. The power of self-sufficiency transforms us. We begin to realize that no external relationship can dictate our emotional state unless we allow it to. That the friendships we once thought were essential were merely reflections of what we needed to cultivate within ourselves. And as we awaken to this realization, we stop seeking friendships out of need. Instead, we choose our connections from a place of wholeness, free from dependency, free from expectation. And when that happens, an incredible thing occurs. We no longer fear solitude. We embrace it. We find beauty in our own presence, strength in our own mind, and fulfillment in simply existing. This is the energy shift, the transformation that comes with age and awareness. It is the natural movement from seeking outside to finding within. And as we embrace this transition, we also begin to understand the power of detachment, not the cold withdrawal from others, but the liberation from emotional dependence. When we no longer attach our well-being to people, we are free. We can love without clinging. We can appreciate without possessing. We can live without the fear of loss. And then, something even deeper reveals itself. The realization that we are not merely human beings experiencing relationships, but consciousness itself, interacting with the quantum field. Our brain is constantly emitting signals, and the world we experience is a reflection of our state of being. The more we rely on friendships for fulfillment, the more we reinforce a signal of lack. But the moment we turn inward and generate that fulfillment from within, we shift into a new state of existence, one where we no longer seek because we have already found. In this space, we transcend the need for relationships to define us. We let go of the past identities that kept us attached to others. We move beyond time, beyond memory, beyond the self that once required external validation, and in doing so we enter a timeless state of being where we are no longer bound by human expectations but connected to something far greater. So as we age, friendships are no longer needed, not because they have no value, but because we have found something deeper, something unshakable. We have found ourselves, and in that discovery, we realize that we were never alone. We were always whole. We were always enough. And that is true freedom.